20 years ago, my wife and I made one of the biggest decisions in our lives. We moved to Rogers, Arkansas. We didn't know it then, but the city would become the place where we would bring our daughters home from the hospital. We'd celebrate so many family firsts. I spent much of my adult life here and had many different careers here. This video is going to be very personalized. Unlike a lot of my other videos, there's going to be some shout outs to other people. There's going to be some call outs to some things that aren't here today that used to be here that many natives, many locals, absolutely love and wish were still here. We gotta understand that yes, there's constant change in life. Yes, there are things that are developed. Not everything that changes is for the best, and we need to talk about that sometimes. So today I'm going to rewind the clock all the way back to 2006 and take you on a personal journey of how Rogers, Arkansas has changed over the last 20 years. In fact, my first shout out goes to fellow realtor Lee Kissinger, who's still practicing real estate today. If it wasn't for Lee, I don't know if Jessica and I would be living here. We were doing research about a new town, a new up and coming town, Rogers, Arkansas. We were comparing it, believe it or not, to Papillion, Nebraska. The only realtor that called us back, so realtors, if you're watching this, the only realtor that called us back was Lee Kissinger. Thanks, Lee. Before we jump into our first section, I need to rewind the clock just to give us a general understanding of what life was like in 2006. In fact, the iPhone that you might actually be watching this on right now wasn't even invented yet until 2007. Facebook, although yes, it was founded in 2004, didn't become public to those that weren't in college until 2006. Your weekend probably looked like going to Family Video or Blockbuster to get your weekend's entertainment, or if you're one of the cool kids, you probably got your DVDs mailed to you from Netflix. According to our friends over at World Population Review, the world population in 2006 was 6.6 billion people. It's now over 8.3 billion today. Rogers, Arkansas population in 2006 was 50,000 people, and it's over 78,000 people today. That's over 1,000 people per year that have moved to Rogers, Arkansas since 2006. Our first chapter today is Rogers never forgets its roots. So yes, we're going to go back a little bit before 2006. Everyone knows about Walmart, headquartered in Bentonville. Yes, and in fact, in July of 1962, Walmart opened their first supercenter, Store One, located on Walnut Boulevard in Rogers, Arkansas. And your buddy Anthony wasn't the only product that came out of Michigan that moved down to Rogers, Arkansas. Daisy Air Guns moved from Plymouth, Michigan down to Rogers, Arkansas in 1958 and is still there today. So speaking of Rogers' roots, when people are moving here and they're asking me, hey, Anthony, what's Rogers, Arkansas like? I don't tell them necessarily about Pinnacle Hills. I want them to go where it all started. In fact, it's because of the Frisco Railway that put Rogers on the map back in the 1880s. That's right, I want to direct people to downtown Rogers on the brick streets, which, did you know the brick streets in Rogers, the people that lived there during that time, they thought the brick streets were only going to last about 10 years.
Don't underestimate.
And actually, they've lasted over 100 years since 1924. One of the things I always appreciated about Rogers is that even though it's grown tremendously in the last 20 years, it's never erased the reason people loved it in the first place. And in case you're wondering, the railroad that still rolls through downtown Rogers isn't there just for decoration. Wrapping up this chapter, if you want to know more about Rogers history, you really should go check out the Rogers History Museum in downtown Rogers. Lots of cool history about Rogers. Then, of course, do me a favor and go walk through the Daisy Airgun Museum. When Jessica and I moved here in 2006, yes, we were looking for a city that was up and coming and it was growing. But what was important to us is finding a city that had its roots, it had its identity. It already knew who it was and it didn't have to figure out who it was trying to be. But we were excited about what was yet to come in Rogers. Little did Jessica and I know, a few miles west over in the Pinnacle Hills area, that things were going to change dramatically and real quick and in a hurry. Chapter 2, the year that a lot of things changed for Rogers and for the Mosley family. Of course, as you already know, we moved here in 2006, but Pinnacle Hills Promenade opened in 2006. Has anchor stores like JCPenney, Dillard's. I personally remember when the girls were born and we loaded them up in our double stroller and we took them down to Pinnacle Hills Promenade. It was a night out for our family. We would go drive down there and walk down the promenade. It was a cool thing back in 2011 when the girls were born. You may be a native saying, yeah, well, I remember when New Hope was a dirt road. Yeah, I mean, everything keeps changing. I'm sure the people that came here in the 1800s could probably tell us a whole different story than what we see today. Rogers almost had no hotels. There was very little office space, lots of farmland. Now look at it. I mean, there's restaurants, hotels, corporate offices. The Mercy Hospital there in the Pinnacle Hills area. That whole skyline over in Pinnacle Hills has changed. Right over there by the church that has the 3 crosses that you can see right over there off of Highway 540. See, still calling it 540, Highway 49. In fact, the 3 crosses that you see over there for Cross Church, that used to be called Church of Pinnacle Hills, that's where we used to go to church. They used to meet where City Title is now. That's where we used to meet for church while we were building the building over where Church of Pinnacle Hills or Cross Church is now located. Going back to personal story, that's right. We moved here in 2006. Jessica and I bought our first home together in 2006. When we moved here the first time, I wanted to be a real estate agent. I would become a real estate agent. In fact, Lee Kissinger, that I mentioned at the beginning, said, "Hey, Anthony, you speak Spanish. You seem to know a lot about houses. Why don't you become a home inspector?" So I opened my first business in Arkansas in 2006 called Mr. Inspect It. Back then, I was the only bilingual home inspector in all of Northwest Arkansas. This single development of the Promenade and the Pinnacle Hills area, it started something that completely shifted the city center from downtown Rogers, where we were talking about earlier, out west to Pinnacle Hills. There's a lot more commerce that happens out there, but again, as the west side of Rogers exploded, something really interesting happened. Rogers somehow kept many of the places that people grew up loving. That brings us to chapter 3, the places that never left. Now, depending on if you're a native to Rogers, Arkansas, or if you've only lived here a couple weeks, I think we need to highlight a few places. But before we jump into that, I have to say, at one point, these places were never there. So again, if you're a native, you might be saying, "Hey, I remember this place or that place." Well, yeah, but at some point, that was never here either. Just like Target was never here before it came in 2006. And neither was Cabela's, which is now Bass Pro, was not here in 2006 either. But I digress. Montney Chicken Inn, since its inception in 1971, is still here today. Earlier I mentioned Daisy Air Guns. Since 1958, they're still here. Of course, Beaver Lake, that was dammed up in the mid-60s, is still here. I can't tell you how many people have told me stories about how they remember that whole area when they lived out there and what's changed in that area since then. Of course, I bet to believe some natives at that time were just like, "What are you doing? This is where Montney is. This is where that Montney Hotel is and the amphitheater and all that kind of stuff." Of course, Lake Atalanta. We're going to touch base more on Lake Atalanta later at the end of the video. So if you are a local, if I'm naming some of these places, please stick around to the end because there's going to be some that I'm sure are going to take you down memory lane. In fact, one place that's still there today, although they're not in their original Rogers location, is White's Jewelry. After the girls were born, I had them make a custom ring for my wife that had all our birthstones in it. White's Jewelry did a great job, and Jessica still wears that ring today. These places that we talk about, for instance, Montney Inn, where people, many families, I'm sure, have lots and lots of memories. It's a place where they probably brought clients, family from out of town. They've celebrated birthdays there. Maybe after time on the lake, they stopped there and got a family meal and then went the rest of the way home. And maybe White's Jewelry was, or maybe it will be for those of you that are looking to move here, is something that creates a history and a memory for you and your family also. Rogers certainly wasn't disappointing for the Mosley family. It was continuing to grow and grow right along with us. In fact, the next year in 2007, the LPGA Tour made its first stop in Rogers, Arkansas. And personal story here. No, I'm not crying. Not yet. And the inaugural year of the Shark Sprint Triathlon was in 2007. I bring that up because at the beginning of the video, I said, Rogers was so impactful to me. This was part of my growth story of my love for triathlon. That's a triathlon memory. That's a triathlon memory. Of course, I had to dust this one off for you as well. The first Shark Sprint Triathlon in 2007 was my first ever triathlon. I did triathlons for 16 seasons. My first triathlon, right there, 2007. Third place, age group award finisher. What's up? I don't know where I finished in the general standings, but I was pretty proud of that. And that's what got me to continue on with doing triathlons. I wanted to continue to improve myself. That carried me on for so many years. Of course, I took off 2011 when the girls were born in the last few years to really develop and grow my business even that much more. But Rogers has a special place for me. Okay, before I get too sappy, let's move on to the next section. Who am I kidding? The next chapter is actually raising a family in Rogers. Many of you that are looking to move here are wanting to raise your family here, or maybe raise your grandkids here. Well, this is probably the most personal section for me, but even though this section is going to be very personal for me, this is probably going to be the section that I'm going to pair along the growth of Rogers with Anthony and Jessica, and of course the girls' growth in Rogers also. But for me, this is the town where my wife and we bought our first home together. In fact, we bought it on a lease option to buy, basically a rent-to-own purchase. I don't see too many of those anymore. In fact, I was able to dig out one of my old drawings when we were adding on to our house. We added on a playroom and a primary bathroom. I drew it out and then I actually built it. Although you can see from the picture, the shower's on the opposite side, and I ended up building a dual vanity on one side of the bathroom. It still ended up pretty close to the picture that I drew out. One business that's still in downtown Rogers that was founded in 2006, my buddy Philip Thomas started Novo Studio. Shout out to you, Philip. Philip's the one that took our pregnancy photos. He took our newborn photos. Phil has been a staple in Rogers, Arkansas, downtown, still has his shop down there since 2006. The first Roots Chris in Northwest Arkansas was opened in Pinnacle Hills area in 2007, and Jessica and I celebrated many anniversaries there. Birthdays, nights out on the town. And now today, the world's largest Roots Chris is open in Rogers, Arkansas, and it's a new location as of April of 2025. Lake Atalanta for us in 2006 through 2013-ish wasn't what you see today, and it wasn't what it was back in the 60s, but Jessica and I used to go take the girls around there. Firecracker 5K was a 5K that I would run there. Now you've got Run the Rail Yard, which goes through that same area. Many of Jessica and my memories were going on hikes out at Hobbs Park. Earlier I had mentioned that Church Pinnacle Hills was meeting where City Title is now. It's so interesting that where I used to go to church is now where I help clients close on their homes. Every now and then I get a chance to drive through the old neighborhood on Fox Road out in Prairie Creek. Many of my neighbors and friends that I've known since we first moved here in 2006 are actually still living there today. It's kind of cool. It's a trip down memory lane, and it's always good to stop in and say hi every now and then. Much like you, if you're raising a family, you need to be gainfully employed to be able to provide diapers and formula and toys and things for your kids to be able to enjoy. My family was no different. As you can imagine, as a home inspector in 2009 whose business was doing this because it was following the housing market, I came home from work one day and my beautiful wife said to me, "Sweetheart, if we're going to plan on having kids and actually make a go of this here in Rogers and continue to live here, I need you to go get a real job and start providing for our family."
It's a real job.
So a quick Reader's Digest version of my sales career and a few shout outs along the way. My first sales job in Northwest Arkansas was working for a company called Steel Group. They were a division of Wilshire Steel Erectors. They've built a lot of what you see around Northwest Arkansas. So shout out to Billy Wachowski, Hayden Wachowski, and Carter McLeod that are still there at Wilshire. That gave me an opportunity to sell steel at Steel Group. After Steel Group, I sold promotional products. I sold ADT security systems door to door and called people through the phone book. So shout out to Eric Ledbetter, who I met at ADT all those years ago. We're still working together today. Me a realtor, him a lender. And then my most pivotal sales role probably came about. And so shout out to Mr. Matt Malby, who is the owner of Professional Business Systems, a now 40 plus year business here in Northwest Arkansas, serving business owners with their copy machines. That's right, I was a copy salesman for Rogers and Bentonville area. So Matt, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I don't think I was that great of a salesman.
The worst part is I like making copies.
But it was that role that I was like, you know, there's something to this sales thing. I think I can do this. After PBS, I got my Series 7 and 66 licenses, as well as my Arkansas Life and Health license, and started doing financial planning for people. So shout out to Jeff Reeves, Rusty Menke, and native Chris Brown, who I worked alongside with, helping me get those licenses way back when. After that, I brokered freight in and out of Mexico for JB Hunt Transportation as a carrier sales coordinator. Shout out to Doug Drummond, who was a really good boss when I was working there. While I was at JB Hunt, I was recruited by Teradata to be a junior account executive on the Walmart Global Support team selling data warehousing. You know, the stuff that like Tom Cruise like goes in the movies and he goes in and there's all those big servers. That's what Teradata did. Sold those into Walmart to be able to store data, SKU data. About 8 to 10 months in with my employment with Teradata, they said, well, guess what? Next steps are we're going to relocate you to your own territory. And I'm thinking, sweet. Denver, Dallas, maybe somewhere in North Carolina. No, sir, we're relocating you to service Super Value, Lunds Byerly's, and Menards, and you're going to be centered out of Minneapolis. And I said, or what? They said, oh, well, then you don't have a job. You can say bye-bye to Teradata.
It's the job. No hard feelings.
So we loaded up the moving truck and moved to Minneapolis in summer of 2013. It wasn't but a few short months after moving to Minnesota, my wife's like, hey, where's my husband? Where's the happy-go-lucky guy that I married? You're short with me. You're short with the kids. You need to do something you love. This isn't working out for you. And I said, you know what, sweetheart, what I really want to do? She's like, what's that? I said, remember when we moved to Rogers, Arkansas way back in 2006 and I wanted to become a real estate agent? She said, yeah. And I said, I think I want to do that. I've done all these different sales roles. And my friend, as the shooting of this video, I finally realized right now why I love selling real estate so much. all those other sales roles. That was selling somebody else's product, building somebody else's business. Here in this role, I get to build my family's future. I get to help you directly with your family's future. And so by September of 2013, I was taking real estate classes, and my real estate license in Minnesota became active in January of 2014. Fast forward a few years, I started coaching for a company called Tom Ferry International, and I started selling real estate full-time in the summer of 2014 and haven't looked back since. You may be connecting some of the dots and realizing Anthony sold homes in Minnesota? Yeah, that's right. Also sold homes in Kansas City, Joplin, Missouri, and since my family moved back here in 2020, I've been selling homes here in Rogers in the Northwest Arkansas area ever since. And that's my sales career in a nutshell.
Now, this is me in a nutshell. Help! I'm in a nutshell! How did I get into this nutshell?
But needless to say, our family and our kids were growing up, and so was Rogers. Okay, I got through that section maybe a little bit easier than I thought I was going to. Next chapter is entertainment in Rogers has changed forever. Although started by the Northwest Arkansas Mall in 2005, the Arkansas Music Pavilion started in 2005 with the Doobie Brothers, Patty Loveless, Third Day. But it wasn't until 2014 to where the Arkansas Music Pavilion actually opened its doors with Blake Shelton, Tim McGraw, and Santana, and now has become an anchor for many locals and natives to be able to enjoy mainstream comedy shows, music, and entertainment right there off of 49. Topgolf right nearby opened in May of 2020. The Razorback Greenway, which stretches from Mount Kessler and Fayetteville all the way up to Bella Vista and getting extended further still, was dedicated in May of 2015, and it's a staple for many people to be able to get to work, to connect trails, to go to school, to work out. Of course, mountain biking exploded over in Bentonville, but the Rail Yard in Rogers opened in 2015, which has brought entertainment over to Rogers. The Butterfield Stage over in Rogers has also opened since 2006. Onyx Coffee opened up their world headquarters in the 1907 building. Ozark Beer Company opened its doors in 2013. The Natural State Brewing opened their doors in 2019. Rendezvous Junction Brewery also opened their doors recently here within the last couple years. Needless to say, 20 years ago in 2006, Rogers looked completely different than what it does today. Concerts, family nights, comedy shows, clients visiting, entertaining out-of-town guests. Of course, as a real estate broker, I believe one thing has changed even more than entertainment, and that is what brings us to our next section, which is Chapter 6, Housing. In my opinion, in Rogers has changed more than anything. I rewound the clock all the way back 2006, did some analysis for us. That's right, let's look at how real estate has changed in Rogers, Arkansas in the last 20 years. In fact, 2006, when I was a home inspector, I remember inspecting many of the new construction homes that were built 2006 through 2009 when I finally hung up my magnifying glass. Funny story, I was trying to get MrInspectit.com as my website. That finally came available in about 2023. Anyway, back in 2006, many homes were being built there off of Bellevue Road, over off of Post and Old Wire. Shadow Valley was being developed. Warren Glen and Bentry were also being developed. In fact, one realtor that was helping list properties over in Bentry and Warren Glen is my buddy Jim Brandon, now with Remax Results. Jim and I met back when I was inspecting houses, and actually Jim and I have breakfast every Friday with a group of other guys. Jim is one of the guys that really got me into real estate, and that's how back in 2014, while living in Minnesota, I consulted Jim. Hey Jim, I'm done with this corporate world. What do I got to do to get into real estate? And he's like, Anthony, you'd be phenomenal at real estate. And when we moved back in 2020, Jim welcomed me into his brokerage with open arms. So shout out to native Northwest Arkansan Jim Brandon for not only mentoring me in my real estate business, but also mentoring me as a husband and as a father. Thanks, Jim. All right, back to the real estate stats. In 2006, the median home sale price was $167,000. What? In 2026, the median home sale price so far this year was $460,000. If you're curious to understand the median home size, check this out. In 2006, the median home sale that was sold is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,750 square feet, whereas in 2026, it's a 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,148 square feet. 20 years later, we're building bigger houses. Speaking of building houses, I wanted to look at how many new homes were built each year since 2006. So James, go ahead and pop up a chart. You can see here, my friends, since 2006, we've averaged around 187 new homes built a year. Since 2006, I'll do the math for you on all this bar chart, there was 3,844 new single-family homes built. I'm not talking condos and townhomes and duplexes. Of course, there's been a lot of that developed in the Pinnacle Hills area also. So just consider that a piece of housing that's grown, not even to mention apartments, all of the other Benton County and Washington County cities that have just blown up in the last 20 years. Namely, Bella Vista, Centerton, Pea Ridge, Elkins, Farmington, those have all grown significantly in the last 20 years. A number that I like to track is in 2006, there were four homes, my friends, that were sold the entire year over $1 million. There has been 59 homes that have sold so far just this year in 2026. At the shooting of this video, we're a little over halfway through the year. 59 homes have been sold over $1 million. Housing has changed dramatically. In fact, of those 59, 10 of them were over $2 million, and one of those was over $3 million. And the number I'm sure you all want to know, my favorite number to hate, price per square foot. 2026 so far, the median price per square foot is $221 a square foot, whereas back in 2006, $100 a square foot. Wouldn't it be nice if we could build houses for $100 a square foot? If we could build homes for $100 a square foot, that would not only help solve much of the housing deficit that most of our country sees today, but that would also help new families and young families and people that can't afford to buy a home in today's market be able to afford a home. Just think about that. $100 a square foot, 3,100 square foot house, $310,000. That would be nice. That 3,100 square foot house today in Northwest Arkansas and in Rogers is going to be well over $600,000. And of course, I would be amiss to not say that schools have changed also. In fact, in 2008, Rogers Heritage High School opened its doors and graduated its first class in 2011. Many of you that maybe have been here a bit longer than I have certainly seen farmland turn into housing developments. You've seen old restaurants that you saw go away and turn into something new, and maybe what other people find exciting, you don't find it as exciting, but the only thing constant in life is change. Wrapping up the housing section, and of course knowing more about my sales career from the past, it's a pleasure and a joy for me to serve you moving here to Northwest Arkansas and moving to Rogers, because my family and I have done it twice now. And with all those new families and all those new houses has come something else. Our next chapter, Rogers has become a destination. So much so that Embassy Suites added a second tower in 2007. There's also multiple hotels that have added since, like Hotel Vin. The John Q. Hammett Center was opened in 2006, now called Rogers Activity Center. I still call it the John Q. Hammett Center. Host many activities like Arkansas Home Show, Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, the Boat and Outdoor Show. Arkansas charity The Call has a regular meeting there also. With the AMP, Rogers has become a destination for concerts. Rogers Aquatic Center opened in 2013, drawing people in from miles around. Mountain biking being popular in Bentonville, but also the rail yard and all the trails out by Hobbs State Park has caused Rogers to be a destination for mountain biking also. Of course, with all the recreation with Beaver Lake, hiking and biking trails, corporate growth. Maybe the schools have grown. Needless to say, people are moving here because they want to be here, and many people are coming here because there's something to do. So ironically, and that was kind of the birth of this YouTube channel, is I basically get to help you go through what my family and I went through, not once, but twice. What did we think about? What are the things that we wanted to know about when it came to schools and restaurants and places to live, and where's the hotspots and towns, and how's the growth going to be, and where should we anticipate growth next? I want to help pass that information on to you. This city didn't just change around us, it became of our family's story. And that's why this isn't just a video about Rogers. I have to be honest with you, this was one of the hardest videos for me to get through because it brought up so many memories. And like I said at the beginning, I've got a special section here at the end that not only is going to tug on my heartstrings, but maybe locals, maybe some natives that live here already, and maybe a few of you that haven't moved here yet, maybe knowing a few of these things might help gain you some street cred.
Did you learn that on the streets?
As I do my research, I consulted with a couple of longtime natives, and they had a few of their favorite places to make sure I put on this list. They were restaurants like Tail of the Trout, Crumpet Tea Room, the Jan Lynn Drive-In. Early in the video, we spoke about Lake Atalanta. What you see today is not what it was in the 60s and 70s. In fact, back then, there was a roller rink, mini golf, and lakeside restaurant that many locals had talked about and shared stories about. Before Walton's Five and Dime, there was Sterling's Dime Store in downtown Rogers. If you're a local or a native and you've got a favorite place that you want to recall, just put it down in the comments. I'm sure there's others they're going to make mention as well. One of my favorite memories of early Rogers, for me, before it became Rogers Aquatic Center, it was Doc Wheeler Park. That's where we played church softball. And when we moved back in 2020, I'm like, where did Dock Wheeler Park go? Did I not remember my directions? Every now and then I still call Highway 49 540 because that's what it was called when we first moved here. Like many of you natives, Susie Q Malt Shop was a favorite for my family. I love getting a malt burger and fries at Susie Q's. Of course, earlier I did mention Shark Sprint Triathlon. That was very pivotal for me. No matter who you are, your memory and recollection of a town or one of your favorite restaurants or places is going to be different for everybody. For instance, my kids are going to remember the Rail Pizza Company differently than you and I will. They're going to say, holy cow, that's been there my whole life. I'm going to say, man, I remember when they opened their doors in 2011. You might remember a story that your grandpa told you that's where he bought his first saddle. Either way, Rogers, Arkansas and Northwest Arkansas is going to continue to change. That was the last 20 years. Imagine what the next 20 years are going to be like. My friend, it's always a pleasure to put this information together for you, and now you know a little bit more about what life is like in around Bentonville. And Rogers, thanks for watching.